Yeah.
Hello and welcome to the Off the Grid Investing Podcast. Today we have a very exciting guest on. We also have our co-host, Jamison Manwaring. And I'll do a quick intro myself really quick. I'm a college student at Grand Canyon University, and today I have a professor of mine who is not your typical professor. He's chairman of entrepreneurship. Is that what it's called, the title?
Correct. Yep.
Chairman of entrepreneurship at GCU, and we have CEO of Neighborhood Ventures, Jamison Manwaring. How's it going today, guys?
Awesome. It's a beautiful day.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're great, and we've been wanting to have this podcast for a while because
Yes.
you've been talking about this professor that you've had that
Yeah.
has really impacted you, and so we're excited to have him come into the studio and get to know what we're doing here at the Grid, and Neighborhood Ventures with crowdfunding, and because he's done a lot of things very entrepreneurial in the same field.
Yes.
Very exciting. I'm just happy he made it to class. That's a beautiful start.
That
Absolutely.
yeah, and that he's still a student, so that needs to come first, right?
Yes, it needs to come first. It should come first. So why don't you give us a brief overview, just a quick history, your background of what you do, and how you got to GCU.
So I'm a native Phoenician, raised here for the most part, went to school in this little neighborhood here in central Phoenix. Youngest of about 12 kids, and figured
wow.
I got to do something that my older brothers and sisters are not doing, and that meant leave the country. So I left the country as an exchange student in high school, did that twice in Chile and then Portugal.
Wow.
Then went off to college at Gonzaga, did a year in Spain, came back, graduated Gonzaga, ended up working for the Department of Commerce for the state of Arizona as a trade rep. Ended up in Mexico City. Was there for over 8 years. From working for the government, it's not all that fun for an entrepreneurial spirit like myself. So I bailed on the government after about a year, went into finance, was recruited by a group that does some interesting things, offshore asset consolidation, whatever. Off to Israel, back into Mexico, did that for about 2 years. My passion is for construction. I love to build things. And I got recruited by CB Commercial, one of their spinoffs, to start their construction management division in Mexico. Started it, and then about a year into that, they said, we're closing down that division. You can come back to the States or start your own. I said, I'm starting my own. So did that, grew that to a top 5 player in the market, did a couple $100 million in projects, sold it after 14 years, moved back here to Arizona. My wife and I have a couple of other companies, Spanish immersion preschools called Little Big Minds.
Wow.
I've been started a cross-border mortgage bank. That's a story in itself. We'll get to that one later. I've been a central bank advisor, advised the Central Bank of Angola. That's related to the whole cross-border banking thing. You know, I say you're an expert when you fail in every possible way. We'll get to that later, I'm sure. And my dad was a professor. I figured, hey, I'd love to tell stories for a living. That'd be great. And started as an adjunct at GCU. That was about 12 years ago. And they asked me, hey, would you like to help us grow the department? I said, sure. So then I became chair, and then I started Canyon Angels. We'll get into all that stuff later. And then because of real estate, I've been involved in several other deals and got a few going on right now that are kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I will say you were probably the least typical professor that I've ever had. Most professors will teach you, like, let's say it's a marketing class, they'll teach you about the principles of marketing. Maybe they had like a year of experience and then they became a professor and so they teach it. But you have years and years and years of experience actually in the field, and your class is like all storytelling, which makes it a lot more fun to sit down and watch and listen to. And it's also, you talk about Tesla a lot, so we can get that later. But
Oh, yeah.
this man, he talks about Tesla so much. It's crazy.
Yeah,
but it's fun to hear about
become a big cultist these days, so I don't know. I got to be careful there, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think as the chair of entrepreneurship, you'd be really impressed with how Grayson got an internship with Neighborhood Ventures. We got a cold email from him that probably looked like a form email that he was sending multiple people.
Mm-hmm.
I switched the name up.
it-
I mean,
Hey.
But we're entrepreneurs. We started this company 4 years ago, and we have big ambitions. And anytime you start anything new, you have to put yourself out there. You have to try new things. So I saw when anybody connects with us cold. In fact, we have another intern who reached out to us initially just on their own and hustled.
Also from GCU?
He was from NAU.
Oh, okay.
So, so we're touching them all. We've had several from ASU as well. But he reached out to us, and I know it took several weeks for us to actually get back to him, but we ended up getting back to him. and found him to be really impressive and ambitious, and we like bringing that sort of energy into our company. You know, some companies say, well, if you don't have any experience, then we don't want to hire you, and sometimes you know, there's many roles that need experience, but there are a lot of roles in today's world, especially when it comes to marketing and digital content, where the younger folks actually know it better than the old folks. So we ended up hiring him as an intern. He's done great, and he's been with us ever since. So you got a lot of entrepreneurs just like him coming out of GCU.
Well, you're a wise man, Jamison. I love the way you frame that, and I truly admire your ambition and ability to just outreach and go do it, make it happen.
Yeah,
I say the only way to learn business is to do business.
Yeah.
So on your profile, I saw that it said that you've been an entrepreneur since you were 9 years old,
That's
and
true.
I can't say the same. But I am curious, what was your first like core business? Like, what's the first business you started?
Cutting lawns. So I down the street, literally, grew up on Central and Camelback in Pasadena, you know, and my parents cut me off at 9 years old. One of my older foster brothers, technically,
Like cut you off like financially?
No
or-
more allowance.
Nine's pretty early.
Yeah, that is pretty early.
Like, I was up to getting all my mom's pennies, you
Like
know.
you're-
And at that point, then she's like, no, you got to go out and make a living. So
Wow.
my older brother worked at a hardware store. He got me a discount on a lawnmower, and my dad taught me how to start it. And he said, all right, go knock on doors, cut lawns. And I did. I got 13 lawns. I ended
Wow.
up hiring most of my friends.
That's a business, sir.
I
Yeah,
was doing it every weekend. I bought a driving lawnmower and a side hack, and I pulled the whole thing in a trailer and made enough to pay for at least part of my college, about half of that. I bought 27 bicycles. That was a failed investment.
So were you going to resell those? Or
No, mostly I
rent them
just
out?
lost them. We had like 9 stolen. It was all pretty stupid, but I liked working on bicycles a lot.
You were gonna rent the bicycles out? Or you were gonna,
No,
you gonna fix
I
them
was
up?
just-
Or?
I had them and were using them, and mountain bikes and road bikes and BMX bikes. And
Wow.
I had a lot of friends, so I built a track in my backyard, and we'd race and had a half pipe and all that kind of crazy stuff.
yeah, I'm the youngest of 8 kids,
Oh my god!
and it's kind of the same scenario. It sounds like similar scenario where I grew up, where it's kind of like if you want to have a cookie, you better grab it before they're all gone. And so you in some ways it's not great in a family environment, but the other way is it definitely makes you hustle. And we grew up with not a lot of cash available. So if you wanted a new pair of cleats, if you wanted to play on the football team and pay for the uniform, you had to go earn it. And sounds like your the place that you grew up in your family, that was a value that your mom cut you off at 9 and said go earn it.
Absolutely, entrepreneurial family. Yeah, my parents had several businesses in solar industry, water conditioning, that kind of thing. And when I finally moved out, they converted the house to a bed and breakfast.
Wow.
And I say moved out. I moved out at 17 because I moved to Portugal as an exchange student.
Wow.
Went to go live with the family, and they sent me a letter saying, son, it's one of those dear son letters, right? Dear son, we love you, but we want you to know that we have rented out your room, and when you come home, everything you own is in a shoebox in the garage, and you will have to clean bathrooms.
This was Airbnb before Airbnb.
Yeah.
Totally, exactly, yeah.
Okay, it's
And
ingenious.
so, yeah, Maricopa Manor. It has been a bed and breakfast now for, God, 20
Did you say it's on
years.
Pasadena?
Yeah.
Yeah, because Pasadena is a great street with some great apartments too. I've seen it. depending
Absolutely,
on the-
just after Third. You know
Yeah.
the house right behind Dairy Queen that's got all the big white arches on it?
Yeah,
That's it.
that's it.
I laid all those bricks. I laid all the little tiles you see on the facade. Yeah, absolutely.
So you went to college after your foreign exchange experience?
After Portugal, I went to Gonzaga.
Oh yeah. So
Yep.
what brought you to Gonzaga? I'm from Washington.
So
It's kind of a ways away.
it's
Western
Jesuit.
Washington, but
And I was at Brophy.
Yep.
And
oh okay.
I wasn't the best student. I literally almost failed out my freshman year. Basically, I did fail out because I failed Spanish, believe it or not.
And now you're really good at Spanish, right?
Yeah, in fact, I made it a goal. My teacher, Mr. Cox,
Mhm.
who's still alive, I just was talking to his son today, that I'm going to prove him wrong. That the best way to learn Spanish is to go and live it.
Mm-hmm.
Can't learn it in a classroom.
Yeah.
So that was part of the impetus to go do all these exchange programs and do all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And were you
And
right?
he invited me back to his class every year afterwards. I went down to Mexico with him many times. He's a wonderful man.
I've been learning Spanish for about a year, and it's going fairly well. But that's interesting that that was your experience. What would you say was kind of the turning point? Is it you got to kind of immerse yourself in a culture? Is that where you really
Yeah.
got it?
Well, we learn through association, right? So you have to have. That's why I say the only way to learn business is to do business. Otherwise, it's in one ear out the other. We learn by association, experience as we live, and so each point of memory you have that is to resonate in your brain, I say, has to have some experience attached to it, and then you begin linking experiences, and that's how you begin to. I think is the foundation of language itself.
Yeah. Where was it that you were living when Spanish really clicked?
Oh, well, I guess the first realization when I moved in with the family in Chile as the first exchange student program with the American Field Service, and I walked in the door and they said to me, "Hablas castellano?" And I was like, "Uh-oh, what is castellano?" Because they didn't say "hablas español."
Mm.
In Chile, they referred to it as to the Spanish dialect of Castilian dialect out of Madrid, the central area of Spain.
Wow.
They don't refer to it as español. I was like, oh my God, I picked the wrong country out of the gate. So no, from there, then the realization of people sharing all their experiences, the jokes, to see the humor, just to live it. That was the realization. It took me years though to truly reach a level of fluency. So I wanted to continue with the Spanish. So I applied to go to Spain as an exchange student after high school. And there was no room in Spain. So they said, but there's room in Portugal. I said, Portugal? Well, that's close to Spain. Sure, why not?
It is a different language.
It is a different language, which I realized, of course, on the plane. I bought myself a little, learn Portuguese in 12 hours kind of thing and listened in the airport.
It's similar to Spanish, or
They are very similar, both Latin-based, but certainly the pronunciation of Portuguese is a dramatic departure from traditional Spanish.
yeah. So were you learning business while you were doing these foreign exchange experiences, or like were you in business school doing this?
No, this was high school. So the first two were just
okay.
high school. And in Portugal, in fact, because I'd already graduated from Brophy, I was already accepted at Gonzaga and just took what they call a gap year.
Yeah.
And so I really didn't have to be all that responsible. I had maximum freedom, minimum accountability, and which is what I call college for the most part.
And you need that at some point in life, right?
You do, absolutely.
I had several of those years between high school and college, and I started a company. Didn't work out real well, so I ended up going to school a little later. And I remember this girl who went straight from high school to college, and she was the typical overachiever. Had to get a 4.0 in college. Then she went right into Goldman Sachs with me in my class. So she's 21 as a Goldman Sachs analyst, which is like 80, 90 hours a week.
Wow.
No break ever in her whole life. And she, at about a year, it just all kind of came apart.
She
right?
burnt
A
out.
21-year-old in New York, and it just kind of melted down. And she's finally said, I need a few years off. I think it's better to take that time before you get into a career.
I think it's better to work up to it, probably, right? Instead of just hopping right into it. Because before I even worked at Neighborhood Ventures, I had never really worked a job ever before. I'd done like side construction jobs for my girlfriend's dad. Yeah. But other than that, I never really worked like a 40-hour job before. And then I came to Neighborhood Ventures, and it was kind of a tough to get into it. But now that I'm into it, it's better. But
how many hours a week?
Right now I'm working like 30, 40 hours a week.
Wow, and I think initially probably 20, 25, 30 as an intern.
Still worked up to it as an intern, yeah.
But yeah, this goes to your point, Tim, is that if you're able to learn the concepts at school and then go do an internship either at the same time or, starting that your junior year, you really start to see what real world is and make those ideas come to life. And then that's where you find out if you want to do that job or not.
Yeah.
Because the real world is a lot different than what we have in our head in every way.
Yeah. That's what I'm trying to tell some of my friends right now. They're all like, all my friends are like same age as me, so they're wondering like, what do I want to do? And I'm no expert, trust me, but I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do. But I tell them like you got to get into like the actual field, get into action, because before I got this internship, my marketing class made like, oh, this is stupid. But now I'm a marketer, so I'm like, oh, this like I actually use everything that was in that class, right?
Well, Grayson had grown a social media to like 200,000 people. So he had already done this as, 15 to 18-year-old. He knew how to basically talk to an audience, grow an audience. And
what were you doing? Tell us about that.
Yeah.
It was mostly just stuff for fun. Like I was just kind of joking around. It was on my main social media platform was TikTok, but I had a decent sized Instagram following as well. It was like singing, dancing, like just kind of like entertainment purpose
Sports, you
sports
play
stuff.
basketball.
I like play basketball. I'd post videos of me playing basketball, and it was mostly just for fun. And I was like, people started like make fun of you and things like that. And so eventually I got away from it, but I really learned a lot during that period about like what it takes to get in front of a bunch of people, what people like to see, trying to get as many views as possible, and like what it actually looks like.
And so, he grew it up to over 200,000 followers. There are thousands, hundreds of thousands posting similar things, fun high school things that have no followers.
Right.
So that told me as an employer we're trying to grow our audience digitally, he knew how to talk to an audience. He knew how to change his marketing to appeal to the audience.
And so in my interview with Jamison, my first initial interview, I was like, I'm not mentioning my TikTok because it's like a little embarrassing. And then I was like, because I came in thinking I was gonna like do real estate, like finance type stuff. And so I was like, I'm not going to mention it. But then he's talking about like how we're trying to grow the audience and trying to get more investors because that's his side of the business. And then I was like, maybe I'll mention my TikTok. And so I mentioned it. And I think that's what really like kind of not like got me the internship, but that's what really like why you brought me in is because I'm trying to bring more eyeballs to the business. So
and I kind of want to go back to the same stage in your life when you were coming out of Gonzaga. What was your first role out of school, and how did you navigate that as someone with an entrepreneurial mind and probably an entrepreneurial itch? I would assume was always there.
It's always there, definitely. And I had no idea what the path would be, but Spokane wasn't where I wanted to build my life. My vision was building buildings in Latin America. I just love construction, although my degree was in history and philosophy, some economics and Spanish kind of thing, all mixed in, kind of a weird eclectic mix.
Mm-hmm.
My older brother told me in undergrad, study what helps you think critically and communicate clearly, what you love, right?
I think that's pretty wise.
I thought so too. And he says, if you find something once you get into the real world that you're passionate about and requires an added degree, then go back and get that master's. And I took that to heart. And so out of my history and all philosophy thing, I ended up coming back to Phoenix and I got an internship with the Arizona Department of Commerce. And it was related to the fact that I already spoke Spanish. I had crashed a NAFTA law class at the Gonzaga Law School just because I knew the law students and just said, hey, can I audit this class? They said, sure. So I went every day and got the whole thing, 800 pages of it, and got some really deep insights into it. And so when I came back here and wanted this path to do business in Latin America, NAFTA seemed to me the natural foundation. It was 1995, so...
NAFTA was passed in the early 90s, wasn't it?
Yeah, 94.
Yeah.
So it was fresh on the agenda of the Department of Commerce. They had opened an office in Mexico City, and it turns out that the head of the Department of Commerce also graduated from Gonzaga. That was just kind of luck. Who knew that? But I said, anything that gets me there is a place to take off.
It's kind of a super unique like calling to just know that you want to build buildings and do construction in Latin America. That's like a very unique, like I don't think anybody out there is just like, I want to build buildings in Latin America. It's super unique. Yeah.
At what age did you know that was what you where you wanted to go? Was it after college, or did you feel that in high school earlier?
Well, I think it had to do with seeing how developed Arizona was in particular. Its roads, its infrastructure, how private property worked, where people are building up exactly what you're doing right now with commercial buildings and multifamily. Seeing that organization, and then the shock of going to emerging markets and seeing the infancy of infancy is not a nice word, but it was, because property rights under civil law countries is still difficult.
Challenging.
The process of registering title to private property, you're going through it in Mexico, I imagine.
Yeah, it's a big part of the
Do you have your trust?
I do. Yeah.
All right, okay.
Because it's right on the beach, so you can't own property in Mexico if you're not a Mexican citizen. I think it's 30 miles from the beach, something like
50 kilometers off the coast and 100 kilometers off the border.
Yeah.
No non-Mexican can hold fee simple title.
So you hold it in in a trust, and then you can own the trust, but the trust actually owns the title.
Correct. Yeah, and it has to be held in a Mexican multi-bank, and it's a 50-year renewable trust.
Yep.
And you're the beneficiary. I have an LLC that's my beneficiary here. You can do it personally.
Yeah. So we're going to fast forward a little bit, but I want to jump into your time at IMI, the investing that happened in Rocky Point, because the big challenge right now for buying property in Mexico is there's no financing there,
Yeah.
especially for an American, a non-Mexican national, and if I've been thinking if there's a way to provide financing for folks who qualify, even with a big down payment, it could be a big opportunity. But you've done that, and you want to tell us a bit about that experience and the challenges there.
So that's where that failure
Yeah.
is learning, the ultimate learning experience, right? That's what makes you an expert. When you fail in every possible way in a narrow area. That was IMI.
Yeah.
So we saw the niche, right? You've got so many Americans in particular, but it's a larger community, but largely American, that have bought, and there's geographic correlations between certain areas of Mexico. Phoenix, Rocky Point. You've got Washington and Oregon, Cabo kind of thing. You've got the Great Lakes, Chicago area correlates down to Cancun maybe, or Manzanillo or Puerto Vallarta, etc. Well, so we saw this, and I knew from my companies in Mexico that there was well into $10 to $40 billion worth of foreign-owned real estate in these beautiful beachfront condominiums. And here, this is 2005, 6, 7, all the real estate prices were just exploding. And the money was flowing into mortgages in a way in which was just absurd. Which, all that equity buildup here and the increase in real estate prices here, people pulled out home equity lines of credit on their U.S. property and were paying cash for the properties in Mexico.
Right.
And we saw that and said, this is an opportunity, because the underlying argument still holds today if somebody figures this out again. And that is, as baby boomers are looking to retire, Mexico is a beautiful, affordable opportunity to have incredible beachfront property with inexpensive healthcare and other available care services at a level that you cannot afford in the United
you
States.
can live on the beach. Your cost of living is maybe half, sometimes less than that, depending on circumstances. A totally different lifestyle, laid back lifestyle.
Totally.
I can see the appeal for people who've worked their life here trying to save for retirement to go down there and chill out a little bit for a few years.
So how old were you when you did the mortgage business for properties on the beach in Mexico?
So that was after my business in Mexico, for the most part after.
The construction business?
The construction. So KCA and Alice Group, I had started those, grew those, had moved back here, finished the MBA out of Thunderbird, floated around a little bit, got certified by UBS, Union Bank of Switzerland, as a financial advisor. My thought was, okay, well, I wanted to get into municipal bond structuring for infrastructure in Latin America. That was kind of what I wanted to weave my way into. And one thing just led to another. Being in UBS was not where I wanted to be, and some friends were putting together this deal to raise about $100 million was the target, 100 to 500 million, to build a cross-border mortgage bank. And that's a new asset class. If you get into the weeds in finance, that means that you're always looking in a new asset class. It's an uncorrelated asset. So from an investment portfolio, it's really attractive to pension funds, financial organizations to have a non-correlated asset. Well, a new asset class, meaning U.S. American citizens on U.S. credit, dollar-based income. So it's FICO-based. You're building a mortgage portfolio based on dollar revenue, but it's collateralized by property in Mexico.
Right.
And that's very rare. So my job was to build the rating for that and coordinate all of the Mexico side of everything. I still had my business there. We had several offices and had the ability to manage. I managed HOAs across most of parts of Mexico and on the residential side, and had the commercial side as well.
Yeah, just knowing, having one property that I own in Mexico, and then hearing all that would be involved in this, I'm getting a little bit of anxiety just knowing, there in Mexico there isn't a good legal system. The legal system here, even though there's a lot of frustrating things about it with litigation, medical litigation, other things,
Right.
it works. If you need to sue somebody, you can go sue somebody and it'll get through the system.
Yeah.
Down there, you want to sue somebody, you got a couple of years waiting. You also have corruption in various levels where you have to pay certain things to have happen in government or
you get pulled over by
local
the cops
government.
like I did, and you pay them off with a $100 bill.
Yeah, and that's easy. Yeah.
Yeah, you paid a bit much. I think you need to learn to
Yeah.
negotiate.
That's all I had. All I had was a $100 bill.
But I think this is really cool because you're trying to bring a new asset, like you said, to investors, and there's a lot to that, especially when you're going on foreign soil. But you had a lot of experience in those areas. So, when you were building, did you want to transition to more of the asset investing side because you saw the need there? Is that what drove that?
Not so much the need. It was more like I realized where the money was.
Yeah.
The passion of building things it's one of the few industries where you are taking what is conceptual and making it physical, which means that your customers' expectations are never aligned to what that finished project is, meaning that it's always problematic. Also, so that's the construction management side. We can dig deep into that if you like. But also on the facilities management side, it's just nothing but problems. And because I was also partner in the real estate firm where we were in some ways arranging capital, but being intermediaries, commercial brokerage, head to head against CB Commercial, Jones Lang LaSalle, Cushman Wakefield. And we're looking at the money on that side and the money on the financing side. And I'm looking at my margins and I'm looking at my risk on the construction and operations side. And I'm saying, this is all problems, because I went on every sales call from the first meeting to get the deals for our whole group. It was kind of a soup to nuts deal that we were offering, GE Capital or, the McDonald's headquarters or Walmart or Costco or Visa. All these were customers. We would go to them with the idea of saying, we'll offer you a bilingual, bicultural approach. We'll make your project totally transparent, make it bulletproof audit out of a U.S. standard, and we'll find the property for you. We'll start with a needs assessment, evaluate your space requirements, bring it to the marketplace, evaluate every different alternative there. And they're never apples and apples. In the U.S., you got BOMA standards. In Mexico, you don't. So to compare cost-wise one option to another, so we trademarked our methodology about comparing the different buildings. We said, not only will we do that, but then I'll execute on it. We'll do the bidding contracts for all of your architects, whether it's design, build, or separate concepts. We'll manage the construction.
I mean, you're doing the hard work, and a lot of risk on when things go wrong is on you.
Totally, yeah.
Completely done for you. All the risk on you, though.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, you mitigate those things, right? I mean, contract structures, you do have liability insurance, but it's minimal, particularly when you're at the construction management side. It's the contractors, and you're managing that risk on behalf of the owner, right? So there's a lot of contract structures. We did some at-risk stuff, but it wasn't the mission.
Well, and just kind of going back to the group that you started doing the mortgages. When the great financial crisis hit here, which my family was in mortgages at the time, so the mortgages that were given out to folks who couldn't qualify for them, they were doing no doc loans, low down payment loans, pulling equity out of their house to do multiple things with it, including buying property in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So when that happened here, what was that impact in Mexico? Because that just carried on over, right?
Oh, it destroyed everything. I mean, the business shut down entirely. I had 14 employees, laid everybody off. I was the last man standing. I bankrupted the entity. We had a handful of mortgages still out there. So I'm managing that portfolio. The credit facility disappeared because we got the $100 million from Germans,
Yeah.
Deutsche Structured Finance. That vaporized because all of a sudden everything stopped.
Yeah.
The entire global mortgage market stopped, and this was so far out on the reservation.
It's kind of like I've heard the saying before that when the U.S. sneezes, Mexico gets a cold.
Yeah.
And the difference here is we have the government come in and supported everything in Mexico when it happens, and stuff is the fan. There isn't the governmental support to come and prop things up. Things just kind of fall where they may.
And that particular spigot of Americans buying vacation properties in Mexico went to zero.
Yeah.
And any prospect. So I ended up selling our loan portfolio off to GE Capital for a 1% premium. Because this is kind of a business podcast, right?
Yeah,
I can geek out on the finance stuff.
Yeah.
Which was a miracle.
Yeah.
You know, in the middle of flying lawsuits everywhere, I liquidated the portfolio and made the investors whole. That was a miracle.
And kudos to do that, because a lot of people walked away from obligations at that point because they didn't know what to do.
I had one guy who was actually a U.S. mortgage banker who we financed on a penthouse in Puerto Vallarta, $500,000 loan, and he defaulted after month 3. It took me 2 years to get through the foreclosure because it had not been done. We used the trust vehicle. Yeah. And this is where, tracking law, that law class on NAFTA, where it kind of paid off, because you had a super sovereign credit structure guarantee, because Americans holding assets in Mexico could actually appeal to the treaty level agreements for confiscation. That was an enhancement for the rating structure. Okay, it's just a bunch of paper. The reality was trying to auction off through the agreed auction mechanism that we put into the trust. I mean, foreclosures here, have you had to go through that at all in the United States?
Not too much, no.
So, you have an established way in which foreclosures exist in the United States.
90 days late.
Bingo, the whole notification process. And then you've got a relatively deep market at certain pricing levels where you can liquidate the asset. Right. And even during the Great Recession, it got extended ridiculously. Yeah. And that tends to blow out all financial metrics, right? But 2 years, because we were the first one done in this structure.
Well, and when I bought my property in 2017 down there, there were still many projects that started in the early 2000s that were still basically vacant buildings close to the beach, on the beach.
Yeah.
And there still is, if you think of what's happened in the U.S. markets, if you were able to buy homes, as I had a friend who bought a portfolio of 40 homes, a really wealthy guy out in Queen Creek for, $100,000 for a 4-bed, 4,000 square feet home. Now that home's worth $500,000-600,000 or more, because it's all come back. Still in Mexico, which is a place I love, there's these empty buildings that are still recovering.
Yeah.
And people are kind of now starting to buy them up from the banks as it goes through the process, and this is all, these projects started in the 2000s.
Yeah, so and those things, sorry not to cut you off, but like even those projects like in Rocky Point, those were not bank financed.
Yeah.
Those were all developer financed with some investors, and when those sales stops, those things just rusted.
Yeah.
Those are all from the recession in 2008?
Yeah. Mostly, yeah.
All those empty buildings have been there for that long?
Long. We're on year 12 now.
And we see some developers coming in, buying them. There's a guy that I know who's a Mexican national who's doing a pretty good job with a couple of them, and it's a lot of work because you have old rusty trusses that have been on the ocean, getting totally. More, so you have to come in and say, can I really finish this at a high quality, or do I need to start from scratch? But
that's where my construction side look at them. I'm like, oh my God.
Right. So I think it's super interesting that you're a part of that, because tough times, and now I have heard that there is some new financing coming back to Mexico for Americans to get property down there. We'll see how that plays out. I would assume you probably don't want to have anything to do with that, or maybe you do.
God only knows.
I'm honest.
When the timing's right, timing is so important, and you can never really predict what all the circumstances will be. You can hopefully organize your own skills and resources and be open to opportunity when it's there, and jump on it when it appears. So, I mean, if I could take a little bit of the few remaining brain cells I have left related to the crazy Mexican experiences, I'd be happy to share them
Y-
with anybody.
Yeah, and your experience level there is pretty incredible. Having done it in reality with the company that you were working with, but also their experience in construction.
And that
Um,
business might have worked out if the
Oh,
if the
yeah.
crash hadn't happened, right?
Dude, it would have
Sure.
been a sweet spot. I mean, our interest rates were high, but we had people lined up.
Oh yeah,
At a 9.99% interest rate, people were lined up.
yeah.
Wow.